One step beyond.
This is the most probably emotion-wrecked voice note of the season. I'm out of breath because we've just run around the garden like mentalists listening to One Step Beyond. Oh, what a game football is, what it does to you. And oh my goodness, we needed that win. Sorry, I'm going to get my breath. This probably isn't very nice to listen to. Oh, right, I've got a beer here. Let me have a sip of beer. Oh, just incredible. Just incredible. There's one thing, I've got two kids, Millie and Frankie. Frankie obviously named after Super Frank Lampard, who the Chelsea fans were singing about what it felt like the whole second half, didn't it? A good 20 minutes. And two cousins as well, all aged under 10, and they all understand that when One Step Beyond comes on, it means that something special has happened, and that felt special, didn't it? And maybe a reminder of why we do it, why we're football fans, why we care so much, and why we put ourselves through this week in, week out. This is going to be a very emotion-led voice note, and I apologise for that. I'm not sure how much sense I'm going to talk, but it is what it is, and I'll respond again tomorrow morning with a more sensible analysis. I think the obvious thing to say is, with 85 minutes, I don't know how late the goal was on the clock, this voice note and this podcast was going to be very, very, very different. And I mean, I'd almost laid it out, really. Joe and I think both had talked about it, thinking if we were going to lose today, or even not win, to be honest, we had to win today, didn't we? That it was going to be, let's be fair, knives out on Maresca, knives out on the sporting directors, knives out for the owners and probably for some of the players as well. But football's a results business, and things can change, in the blink of an eye, and it felt like that happened there. Tyrique George, who probably should have been getting more minutes, to be honest. I mentioned it after the Ipswich game, didn't I, saying that I didn't really understand why he didn't get on in that game, having scored in midweek. He's always looked lively when he's played for Chelsea. I've always liked the look of him. I think we all have. It said a lot that he came on, up front ahead of the likes of Nkunku. And, he didn't get much ball, let's be fair. But the one chance he gets was a brilliant finish. Really, really good finish. The first bit of quality in front of goal we'd seen in the whole game up to that point. And then you thought, right, it doesn't mean anything, a draw. It doesn't help us. It puts a plaster over the problem, doesn't it? And then, again, huffed and puffed. To be fair, they kept going. The players knew we had to win the game. And, what a goal. A player who has been frustrating for a lot of this season, let's be fair. I think a lot of us were excited about Neto. He's been frustrating. But that was the moment there of what he can do. On either foot, he's got a great shot on him. Minutes earlier, he'd shot when he shouldn't have done, really. And then what a goal, what a moment, what a celebration. Those fans at Craven Cottage who were in brilliant voice throughout, were going absolutely crazy, as we were, and I'm sure you were, wherever you're listening, wherever you were watching. It felt, it was massive for our season. My cliche this season has been saying that, this game is season defining. That potentially was, and it will mean nothing if we now don't go on and beat Everton. It won't mean anything. But if Chelsea can use this game as a turning point in the season, if Maresca can use it as a turning point for him, then we've seen it many, many times. Things can change very quickly. I'll go to the extreme example. Sir Alex Ferguson was a game away from being sacked as Man United manager. I'm going to go for the most extreme example. But my point is, things can change. And if Maresca can use that, use the energy that was there in the performance today, because to be fair, the performance hadn't been bad. And when we were losing the game, it looked like we were going to lose. I wasn't even really going to talk about the game today because I don't think the game spoke to the problems too much. I thought that the actual attitude and general desire was there. There are clearly issues. There's issues with confidence in certain players that you can see in front of goal, just second guessing themselves. Palmer, Jackson, people like that. That's a concern because if we don't get those two scoring in this run-in, we're going to struggle. We know that. There seems to be a little bit of the morale's not quite there. Hadn't been quite there. The players moaning at each other when passes are going astray. Those kind of things. But again, back to what I said, things change. And if the players can use that moment, the celebrations were understandably wild. They will be absolutely wild in that changing room now. I'm sure the interviews that we'll hear very soon will be exactly wild as I was probably going in the garden a minute ago. Then, yeah, maybe there's room for optimism. And you've only got to look at Newcastle yesterday getting battered really by Villa, that all of the teams around us are susceptible to lose games. That's why we're all in this pack together. We've all been losing plenty of games this season. Chelsea just have 5 more cup finals in the league that we have to try and get through, and it's in our hands, isn't it? You know, we play Newcastle, we play Forest. We can do it, but we need to start playing a bit better, and we need to start showing the same fight that we did in the end of that game. I'll leave it there. I'll hand over to Joe. But wow. To be a football fan, to be a Chelsea fan. And thank you, Pedro Neto, for that moment. It'll be an Easter to remember in this family and in this household. The Blues.
What an incredible voice note, mate. Well done. Really brilliant. You've really captured the mood there for everyone to hear. I think if that doesn't get you excited or make you feel happy, then nothing will. You must be dead inside. So, yeah, really, really pleased for your voice note there, mate. That was great to hear. All the emotion and kind of that frustration in many ways coming out of you. We had a chat, didn't we, 10 minutes before the game was about to end. We were 1-0 down and we're looking at teams around us. You're thinking if we lose this, we're going to be 6 points clear of Brighton in 10th. And with our run of games, you could see us dropping down that far if you're not careful. So the fact that we can actually not just draw, like you say, a draw would have done nothing for us, but to turn it around completely and win, I think is real testament to the players there. They haven't thrown the towel in, which I thought in many ways they had after Legia Warsaw. And the fact that we're losing again today, I just thought, I don't know. If we lose this one, I honestly thought we might not win another game this year. We might draw one or something, but I just didn't see us picking up any points. And then you are seriously questioning everything to do with Maresca, the sporting directors and the owners and anyone else involved. You'd have to say that was a miserable failure. I know whether it's short term or not, whether a year is enough to say that, but if Chelsea was to lose out this year, then you'd have to sort of point some fingers. But look, they've done it. They haven't thrown the towel in. They're still fighting. And as one of my mates says, he's a big gambler. As long as I've got a chip and a chair, I'm still in play. And Chelsea have got a chip and a chair still. So we're still in this. I said last week that our old Chelsea teams of years gone by, when we had Drogba and Cech and Lampard and Terry and all those other fantastic players, you'd lose a random game to West Brom and then you'd find yourself playing against Man United, Liverpool and Barcelona in the same week, and you'd be thinking, oh no, just lost to West Brom, how are we going to beat these teams? And you go and beat all of them and you'd be so surprised. Well, maybe there's a tipping point here because Everton are the form team in the league at the moment. So we're playing them at home, which is good. Our home form against Everton is very, very good. Our record is superb. So if we can knock them off, even if it's a 1-0 scabby win, I don't really care. That gives you a good confidence booster going into Newcastle and then Liverpool, Man United. So I'm a lot more optimistic after that win because I didn't see us winning there today at all. I said to Chris, that would be it. We wouldn't beat these and a draw wouldn't be good enough. And I felt as though this would be, the beginning of the end, to be quite frank. But as it's turned out, we've done the business today, and I'm not going to go into the game massively because I don't think it matters. I think sometimes, like you just said there, Chris, the emotion of the game, what did we need to do today? We needed to win. Facts. That's it. Just facts. So I do want to pick out a couple of little things, not to do with the game actually, but just things that I saw at the end. I love the fact that Sancho pushed Tyrique George right to the front of all the players when the game had finished and when they were celebrating amongst the fans, and pointed towards him a few times and just pushed him right to the front and said, "Go on, mate, have your moment." And all the fans sang his name and they obviously gave him a massive cheer. And I thought, do you know what? For a lone player to do that, that's pretty special. And I think Sancho recognises that he's, as silly as it sounds, because he's quite young, but he's probably one of our oldest players in the team. And he's actually, a leader might be a bit strong, but he's definitely got leadership qualities about him. And I've noticed when he's been taken off a few times, he's never moaned. He's never groaned. He's sort of patted the next person on the bum and said, go and change the game for us. He's got a little bit about him, Sancho. So that was pleasing to see. And the fact that Levi Colwill said a couple of weeks ago about Chelsea having 6 or 7 cup finals left, and we must go and win them, and we know what we've got to do. Well, I think you saw today that was a bit of a cup final performance. In FA Cup finals and things, often you don't play your best, and if you can nick a win at the end, that's it. The other team haven't got time to claw a goal back, and that's exactly what happened today. A late-ish goal from George, and obviously the fantastic finish from Pedro and Neto at the end, and Fulham had no response to that. They couldn't come back in time, and it did feel like a cup final. And like I say, if they can go and beat Everton, and maybe do the unthinkable and beat Newcastle away, or certainly pick up a point, then that again leads us to great form going into Liverpool, Man United, and Nottingham Forest. And if Forest don't pick up their win this weekend, they're going to feel a little bit under pressure. They're going to be a little bit unsure of themselves, and I think they'll be looking around those teams above them and going, "Well, actually, Chelsea, City, etc. I don't fancy this too much," and they might have a little bit of a wobble themselves. So I think it's important for that group. You could sense it at the end, what it meant to them, and you could say it's only beaten Fulham. And if you're thinking that, you're probably right, and I know that. Sheen knows that, and I'm sure most of you know that. But when you're a young team and you're a young group and results haven't gone your way, we hadn't beaten a team this year, this side of January, higher than 16th place in the league yet this year. So that shows you the sort of disgusting run we've been on. And obviously the poor result against Ipswich last week, you wondered, are they on the wobble? Have they down tools essentially? Well, I don't think they have. I think they're still fighting. I think there's something to get behind now, and I hope that the home form and the home support can really get behind Chelsea versus Everton next week, and we can get another win in the bag against an informed side and go on to St James's Park and actually have a good end to the season. It could be fun, because if we end up winning a few of these games and maybe drawing some of the more important ones, who knows? We'll forget all about the previous 30-odd games. So it is a results business a lot of the time. I do hope that we can pull off a miracle. There's always a chance it can go the other way. I get that completely. But I think Maresca needs to look at himself now and look at what happened today. Look at the support the Chelsea fans gave the team the whole way through that game, and actually come out and acknowledge it, for one. And secondly, look at it and say, do you know what? Sometimes I've got to throw caution to the wind. I can't just play the same way each and every minute of every game. I've said before, have your principles. I don't mind having principles in a manager. Have a certain style of play, but be prepared to change when it's not going well. And even just seeing Neto and George shoot from where they did, I don't think we would have done that a few games ago or whatever. I felt like we actually sort of had to go for it, so we had to shoot. It was almost like, come on, boys, let's have a go. So hopefully there was a little bit of that involved with Maresca today. Let's give him credit. When Chelsea lose, we give him plenty of stick. Let's give him some credit for the win today. Whether people will or not, I don't know, but I do feel as though he's not a bad guy. He's not a bad person. Whether he's up to the job, he's still to be decided. But on today's play, I think we just need to concentrate on a massive win for the club. And it's pushed us in the right direction. And hopefully we can build on this.
Hey, it's Chris here with a really quick message. check us out on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. You'll find video clips, photos, and much more about everything we discuss on the show. Plus, it's a great way to get in touch to tell us your thoughts, share your feedback, or just say hi. Follow us on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. And now, back to the show. A slightly calmer note from me now. It's Monday evening. Fortunately, the Chelsea ladies team, women's team, have just been roundly beaten by Barcelona. It's a real shame because they have been the one thing really holding the club together this year. But yeah, that Barcelona side are just too good, aren't they? A couple more things from me on the game itself. Just a couple of small details, and then I want to talk about the run-in, because it's basically the one interesting thing left in the Premier League this year, isn't it? So yeah, a couple of things about the game which I thought were interesting. One was a funny moment, but I don't know if it caught everyone else, but with obviously about 20 seconds left of the game, it actually felt like the game was over. The referee did a dummy call on the final whistle, which was, for my heart rate, not good. I don't know about everyone else, but those who noticed that you could hear the away fans all cheered as well, because it looked like he'd literally blown the whistle. And I'm sure like a couple of the players reacted that way, but then the game carried on, and then Fulham put another cross in. And I was thinking if they had scored at that point, I don't know what I'd have done. But yeah, luckily we got over the line. And another interesting detail from the game was I wrongly said that Nkunku had not been, that Tyrique George had come on over Nkunku off the bench. Actually, Nkunku wasn't even on the bench. And Maresca saying that was because he'd been left out for technical reasons. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about Nkunku enough, really, I think, in the last few weeks. He's been it's just been a huge disappointment, hasn't it? And to be fair to Maresca on that one, the way that Nkunku has played and did play in midweek, for example, you really, really can't blame him. And Tyrique George, who is a winger by trade, let's be fair, has now, in the last couple of appearances where he's played up front, done really well. Obviously scoring in Warsaw, a good kind of poacher's goal, and then just a really, really good goal today that any striker would be proud of. So yeah, he actually could really have a part to play in this run-in, because with Nkunku very much out of favour and Jackson still struggling a little bit, there is a place, I think, for him to get a lot more minutes. So let's see how that plays out. Maresca himself loved his he got a booking, for those who didn't see, he got a booking for how he celebrated the second goal, which is great to see in terms of that passion and emotion is what you want. He didn't go over to the away fans at the end of the game, but he said that wasn't his moment, it was for the players, which is, yeah, fair enough. But I think he's probably also worried about the reaction he might get. But I've got to call out something that he said in the press conference, which is this message that it's already been a good season because we've spent so much time in the top four. And he keeps repeating this idea that Chelsea didn't spend any time in the top four in the last 2 seasons, and we've spent, which we have most of the season, in the top four this year. I mean, it's sort of Spurs talk, isn't it? Third in a 2-horse race, and just this kind of lack of winning mentality that you just don't want to hear from a Chelsea manager. I mean, number one, it's ridiculous because the Premier League season is about where you finish. It's not about where you spent most time in the season. It's a joke, isn't it? It's kind of like Arsenal last year, spending most of the year up first and finishing second. It's irrelevant. And secondly, it's just expectations. It's like, come on, like, we will judge the season at the end of the year, and Chelsea should be minimum hoping for top four, not accepting that even if we don't get there, it's already a good season. So yeah, don't like to hear that, and I think he needs to manage those kind of things. The way he talks, I think sometimes it just doesn't come across as the winning mentality that as fans you want to hear. Fans of any club probably, but especially at Chelsea with the sort of DNA that we've built up for the last 20 years, it just doesn't fit quite right, does it? I wanted to talk a bit about the running because I think it's really, really interesting. So recording this before Forest go to Spurs on Monday night, and again in the same very weird feeling I had genuinely refreshing the Liverpool game to see what the score was, and I wouldn't say celebrating when I saw that Trent had scored, but certainly a mini fist pump, because we really, when they come to the Bridge in a couple of weeks, we really want them to have won the league, hopefully next week, and be coming to the Bridge having a week-long hangover, hopefully, with nothing to play. if that had stayed as it was looking more and more likely that they becomes the Bridge looking to win the league at the Bridge, which in itself would be absolutely horrible, let's be fair. But equally, if we can be playing them with basically them already having done all of their business this season, I think that's, that is going to make potentially quite a big difference to that game. So got to hope that they can get the business done against Spurs next week. Likewise, we'll be supporting Spurs, I guess, quietly tomorrow against Forest. I hope they get a result. But yeah, recording now, there are 2 points between Newcastle in third and Villa in seventh. It's absolutely crazy. And the run-in for all the teams, I think, is interesting because Chelsea have almost, arguably got the hardest run-in on paper. But it's all about momentum, as we know, and it's also about when you play teams, isn't it? So we play Man United and Liverpool at home in that run-in. Obviously, United have been terrible this year, but typically not an easy game. Liverpool clearly one of the hardest games you play. But as we said, if Liverpool are on the beach at that point, that game becomes a lot softer. You play United, they could be preparing potentially for a Europa League final at that point. That game becomes, again, a bit softer. So that has a big part to play. The Newcastle away and Forest away games are huge, clearly. But if we can get our business done at home, we may not need too much from those games. You might be able to get away with a point in one of them to be enough. It's that tight at this point. And you go through the rest of the teams and look at their fixtures, and I won't bore everyone now by going through them all, but you can see tough games in all of them. Whether that's Forest having to go to Palace and West Ham, which is, never easy. Brentford on decent form for them. You got Newcastle have got to go to Arsenal and Brighton, for example. Obviously, Villa play Man City away next, so City and Villa playing each other. Villa also have to go to Man United, have got Spurs in the run as well. So they have to go to Bournemouth as well, actually. So there's arguments that you could put that actually every team will, I think, drop points, as we've seen. I kind of said earlier, the reason we're all so tight is that we've all, been dropping a lot of points this season. I looked at it earlier, and Forest have lost an incredible number of games this year. They just haven't drawn many, which is why they're doing so well. So there will be points dropped on the way. Chelsea just have to really focus on our business. And it starts with Everton next week, which I think is going to be a very tough game. Joe, as you said earlier, how you have a terrible record at Stamford Bridge, Moyes himself does as well. That's a huge one. We have the benefit, actually, of, probably we haven't really talked about it, but the benefit of the quite surprising Conference League draw that we've got. And I'll need to get their team. Djurgården, is that what we're going to call them, from Sweden, which was they were a bit of a surprise winner in the quarters. Now, no guaranteed thing, as we saw the other night against Warsaw, but you've got to be thinking that we can get the business done against them fairly comfortably, which would mean that ability to hopefully rest players and certainly not have crazy minutes in the legs of those who are involved, which will help us, because then you've got that, as I said, that Liverpool game, the Newcastle away game, then Man United at home, and then we finished at Forest away. So it's exciting, isn't it? You want stuff to play for at this point in the Premier League season. We haven't had it for years, let's be fair, of anything interesting. Playing for top five as it isn't as exciting as winning a trophy. I don't consider it in the same boat as winning a trophy. I think winning trophies is always more important. But it's where we are. And it's going to be a proper shootout to the end. And you just hope that we can carry some of this momentum and get the feel-good back at Chelsea. And I wanted to finish with one thought, which is just that I think our season really is on a knife edge. And with 83 minutes gone as it was today, the season could really collapse in on itself at that point. I think if we'd lost, and I think we're going to have a very difficult Conference League final, assuming we get there against Fiorentina or Betis, both are decent sides. If you're going into that final off the back of having made top five and into the Champions League, you're going to feel very different about it, and you think the players are going to have that spring in their step. If you were going into it if we go into it on a terrible run at the end of the season, then you go into that with very little hope, don't you? And it really could go either way at this point. I think we could be looking back at the end of the season and be going, we won the Conference League, we got the Champions League, and actually, for Maresca, after all the criticism we've given him, all the ups and downs with the fans, we'll all be pretty happy. And I could imagine him getting that final, by the way, is after the last league game of the season. So it would be after the Forest away game. And you could see him parading the trophy around and actually getting a really good response from the Chelsea fans and saying, you know, we've got through this together and things are on the up. It could go very much the other way. It still could, and we could end up finishing as low as 7th or 8th and winning nothing. And then I think we'll all be calling for his head. So it's going to be a fascinating month or so. And yeah, I'm kind of at the point now, just can't wait for the next game to come. But yeah, for now, I'm going to enjoy the win, and I'll pass back over to you, Joe.
Oh, that is a shame, Mr. Sheen. I thought you were going to still be on your high from earlier. No, I completely understand. We're a few hours removed now from that final result, and it's nice to just sort of reflect a little bit on what the result means for us and for the rest of the season. Of course, yes, we are playing for a title in the Europa Conference League, and we are still obviously fighting for 4th and 5th position in the Premier League. And I do really think it might have been over today had we lost, and at least with that victory, it's given us a bit of a glimmer of hope and something to play for. I'm kind of taking these games a little bit in isolation. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself at the moment, because it's all very well saying, oh, if we beat Man United in a few games' time, but basically, if you don't beat Everton this weekend and maybe pick up a result against Newcastle, whether that be a draw or a win, you might not be able to wait for Man United. So I think I'm just trying to sort of keep a level head on it at this stage, and at least just have some kind of hope that we are still involved. And it's nice to have something to play for. No, it's not a trophy, but obviously the Conference League is. But in the Premier League, Liverpool have been far and away the best team this year, you know, by a distance. Arsenal, I don't think it's been particularly fantastic, but they've certainly been the second best team, and nobody's really come close on a weekly basis. On a one-off game, I think we've looked okay against those sides, and I think other teams have too. But the season on a whole, they've obviously been the two best teams, and that's why they are where they are. And I never expected Chelsea to be in a title race, really. Up at Christmas, they were doing ever so well, and we looked like the team that actually might somehow, some way, compete with Liverpool had we continued our early season form. But we sort of returned to the narrative, returned to where we should have been, probably. And that's how the season's panned out. Arsenal just were more consistent, and Chelsea and a few of the other sides just dropped away towards the back end of the year. I think as for Maresca, it's a pity that he doesn't come out with a bit more ambition in his press conferences and post-match press conferences. You feel like he kind of just, he's trying to make us believe something that we know isn't true. Yes, we've been in the top 4 or 5 positions most of the season. Yes, that is correct. But like you say, Chris, it's not about where you are right now. It's about where you finish. And if Chelsea finish 9th or 10th, that's where you finish. You don't say, oh, well, but we were 4th for a while. Well, what does that mean? You might have played 5 more games than everybody else in the league. You know, you're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. We all know what we've been watching over the last few weeks and months. And since the turn of the year, it's been absolutely bloody dreadful. So be that then it may that we are where we are. It's because of the early season form and the fact that the team have fallen off a cliff and they haven't been able to turn it around has to fall on the manager and his playing style, because we've seen the same performance basically every single week since then. And certain players, Palmer, Jackson, haven't scored a goal since December. So you're kind of going, well, is it all about just their performance and their injuries, or is it something else larger at play? I think there have been some improvement in players. I think Caicedo's had an improvement. I think that Enzo's had an improvement. But I think that sometimes just comes from they're naturally progressing. I don't think you can say that the manager's improved them 100%. I think a few players have gone completely off the boil. I think that Malo Gusto looked a shadow of himself, even though that Maresca said yesterday at his press conference that he thought that Malo Gusto changed the game when he came on against Ipswich last week. I can tell you for a fact that Malo Gusto did not change the game. Chelsea scored 2 goals when he came on the pitch, but he was pretty fucking poor, let's be brutally honest. And there's been more than 1 or 2 players that have basically nosedived this year. I think there are a lot of Chelsea supporters, old and young, that just want a bit of realism and a bit of reality, because you'd actually bring us along with you. If you said, do you know what, things haven't quite gone the way I wanted them to, but we are progressing in certain areas. I know you can't always see it translate on the field, but this is happening and this is happening. I think you would actually make us understand a bit more your logic and your ideas in some way. But he kind of pushes against us, and I think that's a problem. I think if he's going to remain manager, and if he has a good end of the season, I don't see why he wouldn't remain the manager. That the board aren't going to get rid of him if he finishes in the top 4 or 5 positions and wins a trophy. They just won't. That won't happen. But I think don't push against the Chelsea supporters. Lean into us. Let us be your ear, as the phrase goes. We want to listen to you, but don't feed us bullshit. I think that's my biggest problem with Maresca, is that he's feeding us bullshit and has done for a little while. Maybe there's a slight language barrier there. I'm not too sure. I mean, he's been in the job a while. He's been in the country, a good few years now. I think his English should be fairly good. He's certainly better than my Italian, I must say. But I would like to think that you don't need to kind of convince us about something. We can see it's not going perfectly well for you and the team at the moment. But with a little bit of a tweak here and a tweak there, and give me next season, give me this, just give us something that tangible that we can say, do you know what, mate? Okay, all right. At least you're being honest and in your words and your interviews, and saying that, do you know what, that kind of makes me like you a little bit more. So I want to see a bit more pragmatism from him. In other Chelsea news, Esteban Willian's parents have been over this week. They've been house hunting in Cobham and London, a few other locations where they can find home for them and their son. Obviously, he's coming over at the age of 17, or he's 17 at the moment. He actually turns 18 in 3 days' time. And what a prospect he's going to be for us. He's obviously got the weight of the world on his shoulders to be this absolute iconic football player, trying to follow in the footsteps of Ronaldinho and Neymar, and just to name a few. So he's got the huge potential, but also with that comes huge pressure. Some people don't feel it, and as we've seen with Cole Palmer, absolutely irresistible for the first 18 months of his career for Chelsea, and then he's had a dip in. The form's not been too bad, but it's certainly a massive dip in goals. Someone that was scoring hand over fist at the start of the season, and obviously last season suddenly has certainly fallen away. I think we need to give these players a bit of time. He's coming from the streets of Brazil, to be a bit crude about it, and over to the leafy suburbs of Cobham and Southwest London. So it's a big culture shock. And I think, as from what I'm hearing, the parents want to make the correct decision for him. Obviously, I think he likes a party by the sounds of it. But at the same time, I think they're going to want him to be stable in his life so he can put fantastic performances on the field for club and country. And personally, I think it's even more important that we do try and find some experience for this group of players. There's obviously going to be some outgoings at the end of the year. And I do think there's a place for a couple of players to come in and just stabilise and help these younger players when things aren't going correct and they aren't going right. I think Maresca talked about building leaders on the field because he didn't have any when he arrived at the club, which is fair enough. But if you're having to say to Reece James, who's your club captain, I need more for you, and having won the Champions League and multiple other things, is that if you're having to say that already to someone like him, then it's clear that we haven't got enough leaders in our side. And when things go wrong, like things have gone wrong in the latter part of this season for us, who's been the player, who's been the rock, who's been our Thiago Silva to come in and actually say, come on, boys, we just need 3 points today, or hook or by crook, or it's late in the game, and you've got defenders faffing around with the ball when Thiago Silva, goes over and gives them a rocket and says, you don't do that, the ball goes over there, or whatever. That's what some of these players need. And I think it's all very well having flair players and tricky players, and it's great to watch, of course. But at the end of the day, as we all know, you're only as good as your last game. If you can't get 3 points against anybody, no one's going to care about that fantastic goal you scored if you lost 4-1. So I think it's great to see signs of life from Estebel William's parents coming over. It means it's real and it's happening, and I can't wait to see him in a blue shirt. But like I said, I think it's very important that the club do steady the ship with a couple of older heads. I'd like to see that. Whether we will, I don't know. I really don't know if we're going to see that from the club, but I think it would be wise. I think everybody can see it from a mile off that to have a couple of good pros in the dressing room, it goes a very long way. So, yeah, it's been a good day for Chelsea, a good weekend, good weekend to be a Blues supporter, and we now rock on to Everton next week. Up the Blues.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish, Joe, by jumping on that point about experience, because it's something that I think all Chelsea fans and the media, to be fair, have been saying all season. But it really has come to mind in the last couple of weeks for me when, before Christmas, we weren't really, it wasn't the narrative, was that we needed experience, because it felt everything was going well, group of young players, all similar age, kind of on the journey together. But you need experience when things aren't going well. I think that's the thing. And I've been looking at someone like Cole Palmer, thinking, who is there to put their arm around him and say, just calm down, play your game. You're an amazing talent. It'll come. Just relax. Make the same for Jackson, people like that. Who's doing that? Because the rest of his peers, his players, are basically the same age as him, similar experience. The oldest players in the camp are what? Tosin, Bettinelli, and Sanchez. So you're not really seeing it, I don't think, from those guys. And obviously the managerial team are incredibly inexperienced as well. And it really struck me that's probably missing in the group at the moment, and would really help. Even in the coaching staff, it's the old adage, isn't it? It's where you'd love to have seen a couple of old Chelsea players more involved in the back room, like a John Terry or a Joe Cole, anything really, like different sorts of players, just to be able to give that experience to the group. What was really interesting, I think, in the week was, I don't know if anyone saw, but David Ornstein saying that, and he's actually a pretty reliable source, to be fair to him, saying that Chelsea were, up for talking or in talks with Van Dijk if he hadn't signed on at Liverpool, which, I think it would have been a very, very unlikely get for Chelsea, let's be fair. But the fact that we're even in entertaining conversations, I guess, for a 33-year-old is encouraging, actually, because to your point, Joe, you're only talking about needing one or two, aren't you, of that ilk, like the Thiago Silva. Again, another one that I would have sort of laughed about really a while ago, because it would have seemed so unlikely. But Joe Cole talking in the week that Chelsea should be talking to De Bruyne. Obviously, he's leaving City. Again, huge salary. Would he go to Chelsea? All of these unlikely things. But he's, again, that right profile, isn't he? He's a world-class, experienced player, 33, I think, years old, who, again, you bring into the group, not a starter every week, but would be exactly that player to put an arm around Cole Palmer, who obviously he knows well. And I think that's what we need. One or two in the summer to complement this amazing group of young players. And if it can also, plug in potential issue in the squad, whether that's, I'd love Emilio Martinez from Villa as a goalkeeper option, again, an older guy to come in for a couple of years while we wait for someone like Mike Penders to maybe become world class. But that would be great. Just what we need. I mean, whether we do it, who knows? As you say, Joe, it's not been the sort of thing we've done in the last few years, but it just feels like it's what that group needs, isn't it, to go forward? But we will see. And as you say, massive game against Everton on Saturday, and we'll be back to respond to that, and hopefully feeling as upbeat as we are today. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.